incarcerated has done and the crime that I committed has done for me is, it was hard for me to do, I should say, is to forgive myself.
Say that one more time.
It was very hard for me to forgive myself. Now, I've been involved with different types of programs, a lot of several 12-step programs. And I remember one night a young lady asked me, and this was only about 8 years ago, she said, Karl, what do you want people to do for you? And I said, forgive me. And she said, well, why do you want people to do something for you that you're unwilling to do for yourself? And it took me years after that before I could actually get to the point of where I could forgive myself. I do believe that God has forgiven me. I do believe that at least one member of the family of the people I murdered has forgiven me. But it was very hard for me to forgive myself because, and this is something I would like young people to think about also. What happens, you doing things, they do things now without thinking, just for, let's say, survival sake. But what happens when you grow, or peer pressure. But what happens when you grow, when you grow spiritually, and you realize what you have done? That is the hurting thing, even to this day for me, to realize what I have done, knowing better, but the life that I live has led me to this point. So when I asked God to use me, I meant that. And I've seen so many different, every day. I stopped watching news for a while. Every day. Teenagers committed crime, teenagers commit murder, teenagers going to prison.
Do anything trigger you? Do you have like any triggers? What meaning, like if you see something like a flashback, like something that, because I know when I was abused, when I was molested as I was 15 years old, when I was molested as a child, and was taken from the home, and when my sibling and I was talking, and she was like, there was an incident where I asked to switch beds just for her, because in my mind, being that young, I couldn't believe that the person I entrusted to protect me was the predator, to turn out to be the predator. And going, again, things that you're healing, you're asking yourself, because a lot of times, I hated myself. I hated myself for the way that I looked. I couldn't take a compliment. I didn't understand what it was like because I felt like the distortion of my imagery of what relationships are supposed to be. There's still in some areas I still struggle. But the God that I serve is saying, Shai, it's okay. It's okay to be your authentic self. I know I'm kind of rushing through. I'm just looking at the time because there's so much. You got to come back because there's so much in depth spiritually that people need to know. That there is forgiveness at the end of the line. It always, at BAVEIN House, we always say healing always starts with you.
Right.
You have to do it. You have to, because, you said right here before me.
Well, in order to forgive, to be forgiven, you have to be willing to forgive. There was a time when I blamed everyone for what was going on with me. But I realized later in life that the decisions that I made were my own. There were other things that I could have done. So I learned to forgive others, and by forgiving others, I accept forgiveness. There are things that I would love to do. I received a letter about 3 years ago, maybe, from a young lady that I spoke to when she was in high school, when I was in a part of the program Project Wmpr. And this lady wrote me a letter after 20-something years to thank me for changing her life. She heard my story. I spoke to her when she was in high school. And it took 20 years for her to write me and thank me. So I do what I do, hopefully, that I can save just one. If I can just get one person to change their mind, to take a different path, then I've done my job. It's not something I'm proud of. I wrote this book because someone had to do something. I knew that the stories that we told in Project Wmpr, and I saw the evidence of the help that we were given. I said, well, I need to do something. And so God put it on my heart to write this book, and it was very cathartic for me because there was some unresolved guilt in my mind, in my spirit, that were finally able to come to the light of day so that I could clean them, so to speak. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote Journey to Manhood. It can change. Your life can be different. You don't have to go down that path. There's always other paths that you can go down.
So you also taught your father, you have kids, you have children, and just give us a snippet of how did that, everything that, how did that affect your family life, your kids and stuff?
Well, I met my wife at Russ College, and about 2 years after we got together, we had our first child. When I left Rust, you mentioned earlier about the job situation. When I left Rust, now I'm ready to face the world, but job after job after job, I would lose because of the crimes that I committed when I was 16.
So you got out on parole, right?
Yes.
And how long they gave you to be on parole?
Well, I was on parole for the remainder of my sentence, which was life.
Life, okay.
I was actually on parole for 19 years. I did more time on parole than I actually did in prison. And parole.
Are you off parole now?
I am, thanks to former Governor Ron Musgrove.
Okay.
But being on parole is a sentence in itself. There's a perception, and I mentioned this earlier, there's a perception in the minds of most people, unfortunately, that once a crook, always a crook. And I lost job after job after job. And I had, at the time, I remember when I came back from seminary, the first job I had was cleaning catfish machines at a catfish processing plant. The company, after about a month, let me go. They said they were cutting back, all right. But actually what was happening, there was a rumor floating around that I had broken in the office one night, stolen one check out of the payroll check that apparently had been left on the desk, and I was let go because of that. Now this time I have 2 children and a wife that I'm trying to support. Society tells you to get out, you do your time, get out, become a productive member of society. But what do you do when society won't let you? I didn't break in the office. I had never been accused of burglary in my life. There was no sign of forced entry into the office, but I was let go. I have a letter from a former sheriff in one of the counties of Mississippi who wrote an employer of mine after I'd worked for him for 3 days and told my employer to fire me because I was an ex-offender. At the time he wrote that letter to my employer, my crime was 27 years old. I had done my time.
Wow, you had done your time.
And it eventually got to the point.
And they talking about the reentry programs and back into society and helping people. But how can you, when society keep holding 100 years, something happened when you were 16 years old and you're in your early 60s now.
Right, but a lot of people don't, I don't want to say they don't care, but they're not interested. It's only, people will support, people haven't supported this book. It's not popular yet. There are no cameras rolling. There are no photo opportunities for them. And a lot of people, unfortunately, will only support you when it's popular to do so.
Wow.
It got to the point where eventually, the last job I had was, working at a service station in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I worked every hour I could. I told the manager when she hired me, hey, anytime anybody call in and don't want to work, call me, I'll work. As a matter of fact, some of the customers began asking me, man, you must have a bed back here. But by that time, I had realized this is not going to last long. So whenever I got a job, I worked as many hours as I could, save my money, because I knew eventually this was going to
How did that dawn on you mentally? Just knowing this is constant, every time this is like when you have the door shut in your face. And it's like, because currently, other than being an author, you're self-employed now, right? Okay, because of that.
Yeah. Well, it gets to the point, at first, it was hurting. I went through bouts of depression. I began to, unfortunately, drink again, use drugs again, because I thought, this isn't going to change. And when I was on parole, I said, hey, I'm going to eventually be sent back. There's no way. I remember when I came from Ohio, I told my sister, I said, babe, I can't continue on parole. Eventually, something is going to happen. And it finally got to a point where, the job in Biloxi, the guy came in the store one day, and I told the manager, I said, you need to watch him. He's going to steal something. They hired that guy. And the very next month, the inventory came up short. Guess who they fired? When I went home, my wife, and told her what happened, she started crying. Now, when I went home that day, here's what I'm thinking, because this has become my pattern. I'm going to work, they're going to fire me for some reason, and then I'm going to go find another job. I'm going to work, and they're going to fire me for some reason. So when I went home that day, I was saying to myself, okay, I take the rest of the day off, and in the morning, I got to go look for another job. But my wife had had enough.
Okay.
And she told me, she said, listen, I will go to work. You write a book. You've been talking about writing a book. Okay, people have been after you to write a book. She said, you write a book. I will go to work and support the family. And she actually did that. And she has not wavered. Had it not been for, and this is what everyone on parole is going to need, and I pray that they get it, a support system. And that support system can, even if it's just one person who will believe in you and stand by you, you can make it. And that one person for me has been my wife.
We're gonna take a short commercial break. Be right back out with author, bestseller, Journey to Manhood, people, Jackson, Mississippi. Those on Facebook this morning, good morning. You have to go and get this book. I recommend it. It's called A Journey to Manhood. I'll take a snippet and post it. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Robinson Asphalt Work is kicking asphalt and paving with a purpose.
It's not
With
on
our minimal
Amazon,
prices
it's on
and
Google
verified
Books
work.
and Google.
So coating, parking lot striping services, lot paving, repair and maintenance, including your home driveways and many of your major highways. Here at Robinson Asphalt Work, our quality of work speaks for itself. You don't believe me? Ask the owner, Mr. Eric Robinson, at 601-672-0762 or 601-209-3278 for estimate. Robinson Asphalt Work is a proud underwriter of Wmpr 90.1.
Again, here at the Baby House, the talk show, we having conversations going to change your life and the way that you think. We want to thank everyone for listening. Commercial break.
Leadership's the all-in-one legal service just for you. Leadership gives you the ability to talk to a lawyer on any legal personal matter. That's why, under protection of Legal Shield, you and your family can live your life worry-free. Even better, you don't have to figure it out. At Legal Shield, we have qualified lawyers that will do it for you. Everyone deserves to have legal protection at an affordable price. We've been doing business for the consumer and for the business like yourself for over 49 years, creating a world where everyone can have protection. Everyone can afford it. Only start 601-906-7330. Legal Shield's a part of the right of WNPR 90.1.
We're back here at the Baby House, the talk show with your girl, host Shy Jackson, and Mr.
Karl Wansley.
Mr. Wansley, get to the mic. Let people hear your voice. You have a story to tell. You say, I wrote this book as an avenue of hope for the hopeless. It is the story of my spiritual quest for answers in a world I could not understand. My mistakes, my errors, and my sins are offered in the hope that others will be saved. Saved from years of misery, pain, and despair that plagued me as a youth and hindered me as an adult. Necessity compelled me to write Journey to Manhood. We are losing our young people to drugs, alcohol, prisons, and death. It is my hope that this book will bridge the gap that separates adults from youth, that it will serve as a gateway for communications that can stem the tidal wave of discontent that characterize too many young people, our children. It may be just such a time as these I brought about into this kingdom. Beautiful. Tell people how can people get this book? I said it was on Amazon, but it's on, you said Google Books?
Yes, it's on Google Books or Google Play. If you want a softbound copy, you can email me at marflo@yahoo.com. That's MAARIFUL0@yahoo.com.
Okay. All right. Final thoughts. What is one of the things for inspirational moment I would like you to inspire? What are some of the things you would want to say to the listeners?
Find a way to communicate with our young people. We see what's going on, but these are actually children. I used to volunteer at the at juvenile detention centers in every state I've been to when I went to graduate school in here in Jackson. When you get them behind bars, You take them out of their comfort zone, out of their environment. You realize that these are our children. And the portion of your brain that regulates reasoning, maturity, it doesn't fully develop until you're 25 years old. So what we have are our children who are out here committing these crimes. And if we don't find a way to communicate with them, which is why, again, the similarities, as we say in one group that I attend, look for the similarities and not the differences. If we begin to communicate with our young people, find a way to talk to your child, find a way to communicate with the child that you see who is suffering, offer them, food. They all of them are not wild people. They are just babies who are trying to find their way in a world that they don't understand. And a lot of them are going through the very same things that I went through. I had a young lady told me when I got out of prison, who had been knowing me all my life. And she said, Karl, everybody knew what you were going through.
Wow.
And I asked her, I said, well, why didn't anybody help? And she didn't have an answer for that.